Just when you thought porn harms couldn't get any more shallow and pedantic, Mr. Charlatan Heston himself is back on the attack. Get your paws off me, you damn dirty lobbyist, because it's time for the Smackdown.
First, I want to see I could go on, but these examples illustrate how pornography is set into everyday life and to a key sign that
Hi, I'm Pat Truman, President of Morality in Media, with a word about why I'm involved in this war on pornography that we...
I noticed you didn't say illegal pornography, but you did have a noticeable pause between war on and pornography. Why?
have launched here at Morality in Media, and why you should care. I hope you do care. Pornography has a caustic effect on society. It is ruining countless marriages. We know that more than half the marriages that break up in America today have pornography as at least one of the causes.
First of all, no, you don't know that. And second of all, even if it were, so what? Believe it or not, society does not owe you a happy, successful marriage. You are guaranteed the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That means that your happiness is for you to work out and you to achieve, not to push off on the rest of society. So if having a successful marriage is something that's important to you, then that's something that you need to work out, not expect the rest of society to put up informational buffers to stop you from encountering anything that might cause you to derivate in your thought patterns into something other than your little marriage thing. And on a side note, why is it that the only marriages we consider people consider successful marriages are the ones that last until somebody dies? I mean, it's not like at funerals we go up to the grieving spouse and say, well, congratulations, your marriage worked.
We know that pornography is harming children because children have free and easy access to pornography online, and those images that they see have a great effect on them. A very harmful effect, long-lasting. Many kids get addicted to pornography, and they'll never get rid of that addiction.
Oh, well, setting aside the fact that he doesn't specify what age range he considers children, yeah, as we know, of course, no child ever has any kind of interest in human sexuality until they've seen pornography. Yes, pornography is what puts the interest in their mind. Otherwise, they would have no desire for any kind of sexual activity whatsoever and would naturally go to church with clean, blank, unvarnished little craniums that can be filled with the right and proper Jesus-approved way of slamming your love muscle into your wife's unholy pleasure cavern. And then, then and only then, that's the only thing they'll ever find arousing if they never see pornography, because nobody ever has any sexual desire before they see pornography. This addiction to sex only happens after they see pornography. And, this addiction, or not even this addiction to pornography, it only happens after pornography. There's nothing biologically in place beforehand that makes them want to fuck like wild jackrabbits. Yeah, no, that's just totally not there. Just a quick codicil right there. I slipped up in the rant and said addiction to sex, and I know that some people would want to chime in and say, well, he didn't say addiction to sex, he said addiction to pornography. But there's something you have to remember. I tried to backpedal, but there's something that is worth pointing out, and that is, for these people, any use of pornography is an addiction. It's not like, for example, with alcohol, I have had exactly one beer in the year of 2012. In the year of 2011, I had 7 beers. And in 2010, I had 2 beers. And in those 3 years, I probably had about, I'm going to say about maybe 7 or 8 bottles of wine. So that's stretched out over over 3 years. Well, I obviously don't have a problem with drinking. Now, of course, in Looney Tunes like Cindy Ben will think that if I'm drinking at all, then I have a problem with drinking. But let's see, I've never been arrested for drunk driving. I've never gone drunk driving. I've never missed a day of work because of drinking. And as you can imagine, I mean, I'm sure most people who drink beer a lot are hearing my numbers and just kind of their jaws are just on the floor. So I say that because it's very obvious that it's possible to enjoy alcohol without being an addict. So, I feel like if I can go months, even years at a time between having a beer and, I have, when I drink wine, I usually have one glass at a time, like with dinner or something. So I don't even really like to be drunk anyway. So saying that, it's possible to have a moderate, pleasant indulgence of anything that doesn't harm your life. But not so with pornography. For these people, if you look at porn, you're addicted, period. And that's why I bring up that's what gets back to it really being an issue with sexuality in general with these people. Their issue is not ultimately is not pornography. It's people enjoying sexuality on their own terms with no divine state sanctioned approval. So anyway, I wanted to go back and clarify that their concept of porn addiction would more accurately constitute a sex addiction.
Morality in media has demonstrated over the last few years that we can make a difference. We've stopped companies from promoting pornography.
Who have you gotten to stop promoting pornography exactly? I mean, I and the Free Speech Coalition and Adult Video News and a whole bunch, all of the Michael Whitaker and all of the people in the anti-Shelley Lubin camp and everything, we've all been following what you do for years, and we've never heard anything about you successfully getting a company to actually stop engaging in any way with pornography. It seems like most of what you do is beg for donations and claim, make these outrageous claims about how the society is collapsing because Dawn Hawkins' delicate constitution was violated by seeing somebody else look at pornography on an airplane. And so I've never seen, where are the headlines, the news reports that say, Chef Boyardee agrees to stop promoting pornography because of porn harms, or Betty Crocker agrees to stop promoting pornography because of porn harms, or Hostess, or what? I don't know why I'm thinking of food companies, but anyway, I don't see those reports. I'm not aware of anybody you've actually convinced to stop looking at porn.
We've gotten tens of thousands of people, more than 130,000 on Facebook alone, to be involved in this war on pornography.
As of this recording, you have 129,000 and some change. A fine point, I know, but nevertheless, it just demonstrates how unable you are to confer accurate information.
We've gotten the United States Congress to pay attention to the issue of pornography.
Just because you were able to speak before Congress does not mean you had any significant impact. Even Stephen Colbert did that in character. You put up videos of you talking to speaking before Congress and that sort of thing, speaking to Attorney General Eric Holder, and they all seem vaguely uninterested. I've heard a couple of politicians kind of echo some things that you've said, but obviously you have not gotten anywhere with any of this. Obviously all you're doing is lobbying various congressmen. But the thing is, you've backed in 2012, you backed two presidential candidates, Rick Santorum and Mitt Romney, and both of those campaigns got bitch slapped hard by the liberal left. So it's not as if you've had any real impact at all. You know, even if you are opposed to pornography, giving your money to pornography harms is about like putting it in a bag, lighting it on fire, and throwing it off a bridge.
And what it's doing to our children, to young adults, to married people, to all people, what it's doing to the fabric, the moral fabric of our nation's society.
The moral fabric of society, this great egalitarian, altruistic expression that you are so concerned with your community and so concerned with society that you have identified the specific sources of downfall for every person in your society, and you want to save everybody from themselves. And because they can't be trusted to make a correct choice, but somehow you can, you will cleanse the human palate of all that is bad for it, all that you decide is bad for it, because you know better than everybody else. Well, guess what, Pat? You know, you're supposed to be an attorney that like wipes your ass with the Constitution and all this. So see if you can get this through your head. You have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And if you want to pursue this moral fabric of society thing, then you are free to do that on your property, in your house, with your family. And that is all. You have the right in this society to lead by example if you choose. If you have the right to seek out moral guidance from private institutions. If you are religious, go to a religious organization and find what sort of moral guidance they can give you. You are free to pursue that for yourself privately. No one will stop you, and no one should be able to stop you. But that demands a corollary removal of control for everybody else. You don't get to decide what's right for everybody else. And you don't, honestly, when you talk about the moral fabric of society, as if that will eternally always be benevolent to you. The reason you don't want to, this is why I oppose these action groups that are talking about making things better for one specific group as opposed to the individual. The thing is, they're not making anybody more free. They are simply skewing the dictatorship in the favor of one group instead of another. That's not freedom. That's cronyism. So you are free to decide for yourself what is proper to your moral fabric, but you do not want the moral fabric of society being something that is publicly determined. And if you disagree with me, just remember that there was a time when the moral fabric of society included throwing Christians to the lions.
We hope that you'll care in 2013 and support us financially, because we can't do it without you. Our staff is fairly small, but we have a very big impact because of the number of contributors that we have and the number of people who will take action when we ask them to do. Now, in 2013, we're going to launch many new programs.
And I'm sure you'll be every bit as successful as you always have been.
Programs where you can get involved in the war on pornography and make a difference, company by company, that is involved with pornography. We once were able to put most of the pornographers in this country out of business because we have federal laws on the books, and I had the privilege of working with the Department of Justice on that.
Oh, okay. So when exactly, Patrick, did you have, were you able to shut down most of the pornographers. To my knowledge, the only recent obscenity conviction has been for Max Hardcore. So, one out of, many pornographers is not most. So the so in fact, one is not even the most of anything other than itself. If there were only two pornographers, that would not be most. If there were only three, that would not be most. But anyway, move that up to the literally thousands of pornographers that exist in this country, and it's it's incredibly pathetic. Anyway, above and beyond that, I'm not aware of Porn Harms having any ability to the federal government successfully shutting anybody down other than Max Hardcore. And I was tempted to say that maybe what he means is like back in the 40s and 50s or 30s or whatever, there was, obscenity law allowed for this sort of thing. But then he goes on to add that he's been involved with this. So if we're going based on the time that he's been involved in it, that's been late 90s forward. So, or at least the 90s and forward, and pornography has exploded since then, has erupted, has burst forth, has sprayed all over the place since then. And so unsurprising, what is he even talking about? When did they ever have this power?
But those laws aren't being enforced right now. So we have to, number one, keep pressing the Obama administration to do the right thing and enforce the laws that prohibit distribution of hardcore pornography.
They do not prevent the distribution of hardcore pornography. They outlaw the distribution of that which is obscene. The reason you continue to bash your head against this wall to no positive effect, Patrick, is that it is virtually impossible to come to any consensus on what is and is not obscene among people. If you have to apply so-called community standards, or that a average person applying community standards, well, okay, you're talking about stuff that was filmed, for example, in the San Fernando Valley. That's a community that's made up largely of people involved in the porn industry. So, in that regard, you've got one community that keeps it well within their standards. Now, Measure B has passed recently, and I'm going to do a separate video on that. But so you've got one community. Then you've got another community where it was distributed to. Then you've got all of the communities that went through in the process of being distributed. It's how do you apply community guidelines to this? You can't. And that's the problem with obscenity law. It's unconstitutionally vague. But at the same time, it's ultimately ineffective anyway. And many of you, I'm sure, have been wondering why why I've put Aleister Crowley's name in the top of this video, in the title of this video. We're going to get to that towards the end. And of course, I'm sure somebody is by now has probably said, I am now 7 minutes into your video, and you have not mentioned Aleister Crowley one time. That, in my opinion, proves that you are worthy of ridicule, which, coming from me, is so much more profound than it would be coming from anybody else. But rest assured, if you just stay with it, all will be made clear.
But number two, any place that we find pornography in society, no matter what company is promoting it, on cable television, satellite television, in hotels and motels, in stores, etc., we have to challenge them, challenge each one of them.
At this point, you may have been watching this video and been thinking about, donating money to Porn Harms. And to that extent, let me extend this simple observation. You have no doubt noticed that the economy presently is, how should we say, in the shitter. And economists all over the country have been freaking the fuck out. Now, just think about something. I already did what I was reminded to do. Anyway, think about something. Just go with me for a minute. Your economic conditions are brought on by a lot of things. But most specifically, they are brought on by the lack of exchange of currency. Anywhere where currency is expected to be exchanged and for whatever reason cannot be exchanged hurts the economy. It's kind of like starvation would ultimately be the result of your limited food intake. And guess what? When you weigh on companies to stop and try to legally impose rules to stop them from selling certain things, you're hurting the whole economy because you are hurting the free and open exchange of currency that would help develop a working economy. And not only that, you are further hurting the economy because rather than putting your money into things that would stimulate the economy, you are giving it to dipshits like Patrick Truman to try to further harm the economy. People keep wanting to know, how can you like Ayn Rand when the GOP loves Ayn Rand? Because this is what the GOP is like. Not Ayn Rand. They're not like Ayn Rand. They're like this bullshit.
And Morality in Media does that with your help. So for 2013, I hope you'll be with us. I hope you'll contribute both financially and with your actions. Thank you very much. Again, I'm Pat Truman, president of Morality in Media.
So, what did Aleister Crowley have to do with all this? Well, for my final book of 2012, I have been reading Perdurabo by Richard Kaczynski, The Life of Aleister Crowley. This is an absolutely outstanding biography about Aleister Crowley. I could do a video unto itself about that. But it's a really, really outstanding biography, and despite the black binding and silver lettering, it actually does not sensationalize Crowley. It just presents, or excessively, it just presents a very even-handed sort of account of Crowley. I could go into detail, but anyway. Really fantastic book, which I would say is arguably the definitive work on Crowley. And as I was coming to the end of the most recent chapter, I'm about to start chapter 14, The Abbey of Thelema, which, if you know anything about Crowley, that was, that's where the really crazy shit supposedly happened. So I'm interested in what they have to say. But anyway, so I'm reading about this, and I'm reading about Crowley's difficulties in spreading the OTO to America. It enjoyed some popularity in America while he was there, but part of the problem was the obscenity charges that he faced, or that his magazine faced, rather, in its distribution in Detroit. And this magazine, The Equinox, was a periodical that Crowley published, ultimately to his financial detriment, to spread the word about Thelema, about the OTO, about magical ideas in general. And as you can imagine, this ran afoul of the uber conservatives. So, at one point, the Universal Bookstores, which was distributing the magazine, was going through bankruptcy proceedings. So, it says, These bankruptcy proceedings drew the attention of the press, and soon the tale of Ryerson Crowley and the OTO filled the front pages of the January and February 1922 newspapers in a series of exposés that Ryerson called the mess in the press. The first of these articles exposed the existence of Detroit's love cult, as the papers dubbed the OTO. The equinox's naked priestess and Christianity hanged on a gibbet shocked casual readers. Dr. James W. Inches, yeah, that's his name, Detroit Police Commissioner, remarked, the sort of conduct described in the Equinox is common in Europe, but it will not do for Detroit. Federal Prosecutor Paul W. Voorhees was even more vocal. I consider this book the most remarkable and most degenerate book I have ever seen. I am going to stop the sale of it, and will instruct the police to seize every copy found in bookstores in this city. Furthermore, if a chapter of this organization exists in Detroit, we are going to wipe it out. The rights described in the Equinox calls for a sort of conduct we are not going to tolerate in Detroit if we can prevent it. Okay, so already this is in opposition to the federally guaranteed right to freedom of religion, freedom of the press, and freedom of assembly. U.S. District Attorney Frank Murphy concurred, calling The Equinox the most lascivious and libidinous book that has ever been published in the United States, and the most indecent and obscene book I have ever seen. A divorcee soon recounted to Murphy under conditions of anonymity how The Equinox ruined her marriage. Get ready for this. As a result of my husband studying this book, my home is wrecked and I am forced to face the world alone and make my own living. Before this book was given to my husband, he was a good man, true, devoted, and industrious. Night after night he studied this book. He wanted me to read it, but I soon saw that it was not fit even for beasts. I pleaded with him to give it up, but he refused to do so. Finally, he began to go to meetings. He said the book gave him the right to go where he pleased, to do what he pleased, and to love whom he pleased. Actually, the Constitution gave him that right, but the book, certainly gave him a philosophical basis for it. As a result of my experience, my health is so broken that while I want to stamp out this book, my physician tells me if I go into court, I will die, as my heart has been affected. So, what does this sound like? I mean, I know that the dimwits in the porn harms community, like the true believers, cannot see the ominous parallels, or they do, and they think that this is just as bad, or just proof of their rightness. But this is, exactly the arguments that they have been making were being made 100 years ago. This woman's husband was completely devoid of flaws, or at least significant flaws, before he read one book, and it's somehow the book should be made illegal because she has some sort of legal right to have a lifelong marriage that's and then she somehow she feels somehow put upon that she now has to make her own living. Now, of course, for women in that time period, that would have been significantly more difficult than it would be today. But even so, it's still just not. I still see it as kind of disgusting that you're suddenly upset because your marriage broke up and you thought you were entitled to be taken care of. In any event, and that's of course why one example of why we need more women in the workplace, and women blah blah blah. That's another story. But anyway, so I love this. I mean, these arguments are literally the arguments that Porn Harms has been making, and they have been here for nearly 100 years, and I'm sure even before then, but without any shred of success. But it goes on to say, in mere days, the news coverage snowballed from uncovering the existence of a secret society in the city of Detroit. On January 12, 1922, Voorhees received a search and seizure warrant sealing all books in the basement storage facility of Universal Bookstores until they were either turned over to creditors or destroyed. Furthermore, Voorhees pointed out more than anyone, publishing causing to be published, printing. Furthermore, Voorhees pointed out more than anyone, publishing causing to be published, printing, selling, exposing for sale, distributing, exhibiting, or even having in his possession any book found to be hurtful to public morals was subject to a $1,000 fine. So not only are they using this to get the Equinox taken off shelves, they have now expanded it to include anything that could be potentially morally damaging. Well, guess what? In addition to violating the First Amendment, we also have the right to be protected from unlawful search or seizure. So you don't get to decide that you don't get to have a universal law that gives you this blank check to just make anything illegal that you don't approve of, and by extension make anyone who is possessing it a criminal. Because we punish people in a free society. People are punished for what they do, not what they might do, and you certainly cannot impose limitations on them for ideas that they have not even had yet. And let's see. Okay, 4 private investigators claim they had been bribed to keep quiet, and a prominent Detroit attorney, presumably the same one who had earlier supplied Murphy with his details regarding OTO's activities, found $700 on his desk with a note asking him to shut up. Upon inventorying the book stock, an even more troubling finding emerged. Of 2,000 copies of the Equinox printed, only 1,100 became the property of Universal Bookstores. The whereabouts of the other 900 copies then became a concern. Yes, once again, it's virtually wiping out the published information of various ideas is virtually impossible. And now, I mean, this is just 900 books that the police could not locate. Can you imagine? I mean, now in the age of the internet, do you honestly think that there is any piece of information that will ever be ultimately and finally removed from availability? Then when bankruptcy lawyer Morden showed Voorhees mail orders for the Equinox, the stakes got even higher. If the book was obscene, then sending or receiving it by mail was a federal offense. Post Inspector E. Frazier was brought in to determine whether postal laws had been violated, with Voorhees promising, if so, to convene a grand jury to subpoena and prosecute every single person who had either produced or purchased the book. So you're going to prosecute every person who has either produced or purchased the book. So there's 900 miscellaneous copies of the book unaccounted for. You're going to individually subpoena and prosecute every single one of those 900 people, put them in jail, make them a burden on the taxpayers simply for having a book you don't like. The Yellow Press believed the answer came with the murder of motion picture director William Desmond Taylor, 1872 to 1922. Investigators of this still unsolved homicide discovered love letters from 19-year-old actress Mary Miles Minter, 1902 to 1984, in Taylor's copy of White Stains. Furthermore, actresses Mabel Normand, 1892 to 1930, questioned by the police as the last person to see Taylor alive, admitted she was a recipient of the Equinox. Indeed, copies of the Equinox had circulated among many Hollywood luminaries, thanks no doubt to Crowley's Hollywood connections, Sheridan Bickers and Jane Wolfe. Yeah, see, that once again, the law enforcement is off chasing this total red herring, which obviously the murder is still unsolved to this day. So it's the relationship to the Equinox was obviously dubious. They're off pursuing this bullshit moral policing rather than finding the actual person responsible for killing Taylor. I mean, so you get law enforcement. Law enforcement goes from protecting the rights of the citizens to going off on these wild goose chases. This drove Grover Morden to wild conjecture. It is possible that the order has obtained a foothold in the picture colony, and color is lent this industry by the frequent occurrence of alleged drug orgies among movie stars. Some drug-crazed maniac or jealous woman of the OTO may have been Taylor's mysterious assailant. There are nearly 900 copies of the Equinox unaccounted for, and there is every reason to believe that the most of these reached the Pacific coast. Again, correlation causation fallacy in the extreme. Just because Hollywood is reading the Equinox does not mean, and a person died in Hollywood does not mean that they have any correlation. And just because the last person to see this guy alive was reading was a subscriber apparently of the Equinox, does not mean that the two are connected. Even if the person that killed Taylor read the Equinox, that does not prove that he or she did it in the name of something they saw in the Equinox. And even if they did do it because of something they saw in the Equinox, you still don't make the Equinox illegal, because guess what? There are apparently 900, potentially 2,000, but 900 people out there who got a hold of these books and apparently did not kill anybody as a result. You hold people accountable for what they do, not what they might do, and you do not punish people for guilt by association. Credence was, so it goes on to talk about some matters in the Equinox, and then it gets back to it. Because Ryerson is the manager of I'll go ahead and read this because it's relevant then. Credence was lent to this theory by the back inside cover of the Equinox, just as the previous issue contained Dead Weight, Crowley's premature obituary of occult author A.E. Waite. The latest issue contained yet another love note from Crowley to Waite. Titled Arthur Back from Avalon, it described Waite's latest purported exploits by reproducing newspaper headlines about Grand Rapids, Michigan, dentist and murderer coincidentally named Arthur Waite. Waite confesses gave poison that killed millionaire Peck. Waite confesses to 2 murders. Waite grins in telling how he killed victims. To Michiganders for whom the Grand Rapids Waite was far more familiar, Crowley's send-up of the British writer was mistaken as sympathizing with the killer and advocating murder. Because Ryerson, as the manager of the Universal Bookstores, was the only name the press could attach to the scandal, he was cast as the love cult's ringleader, because once again, in the absence of anything credible, they just look for a scapegoat. As Crowley recounted, in Detroit, months after my return to Europe, they repeatedly raided poor, half-crazed Ryerson's house in search of some evidence of the devil worshippers' mystic love cult, and of course found nothing, from which they concluded not my innocence, but that my pact with the devil contained a clause guaranteeing me against the discovery of my crimes. If any of these obstinate asses had possessed sufficient intelligence to study a single page of my writings, he would have seen at once what ridiculous rubbish were the accusations made against me by foul-minded and illiterate cheats whom I had never so much as met. The other members, and once again, what does this sound like? It sounds like people, anti-porn people in the modern age who come to these conclusions about exactly what's contained in various works with virtually no knowledge of what's actually said in them, when blunt and obvious knowledge or information to the contrary is actually contained in the works in question. The other members of the Great Lakes Council were understandably nervous about being subjected to the same treatment and having their names dragged through the mud. Thus, a deal was worked out between Universal Bookstore's main stockholder. He would not sue, and as a Mason was forbidden from doing so anyway, provided Ryerson would not name any of the other members. He agreed, and in the end, bankruptcy-free George A. Marston ruled the questioning out of order. Bankruptcy referee, excuse me. At the end of 1922, Ryerson's name again filled the headlines in a divorce case that served as a final cautionary tale regarding Detroit's love cult. Having parted from Bertha Bruce, they had filled out a marriage license but never filed it with the city. Ryerson, at age 40, wed 18-year-old model Maisie Mitchell on a 30-day trial basis. When she sued for divorce 29 days after their wedding, Ryerson's role in the scandal and his ongoing interest in the ancients' worship of sex returned to the headlines. She accused him of beating her. He accused her of being previously married. Ryerson's last public statement about the OTO controversy in which he became embroiled is both succinct and tragic. I was not a part of the official organization, nor was ever invited. Neither was I its head. When trouble came and unsavory notoriety, I was made the scapegoat. I have, in my silence, practically laid down my life for my friends who have not shown any disposition to help me in this awful trouble, allowing me to stand the brunt of it alone when they know I am entirely innocent of any complicity in the matter. My home has been completely ransacked at various intervals, my papers and books seized, my servants bribed, my library robbed, and I have been persecuted beyond endurance by people seeking evidence concerning the OTO, which has been in error dubbed a love cult and which never had any existence in Detroit. He then moved to Georgia, remarried, and disappeared from public life until his 1931 death in Florida. The drama in Detroit, however, was a prelude to an unprecedented mess in the press that would soon confront Crowley. When James Branch Cabell expanded his short tale Some Ladies and Jurgen into the critically acclaimed libertine fantasy Jurgen, the most ambitious prose saga since Byron's Don Juan, Crowley and the Blue Equinox became the center of another American scandal. After the book went through 3 printings, the public began crying out against the phallic symbolism of the hero's lance, staff, and sword. And this is important because, remember, we're not just talking about pornography. We're talking about they're talking about banning anything that implies pornography. Consider Gail Dines going on about how we live in a pornographized culture. It's not just enough that we remove that they remove pornography. They also want to remove any symbolic representation of anything pornographic from the media. Outrage swelled until January 14, 1920, when John Sumner of the New York Society for the Suppression of Vice, yeah, that existed, marched into, and yes, it really did, I'm just saying, yeah, marched into Robert M. McBride and Company, seized the plates and all copies of Jurgen, and presented book department manager Guy Holt with a summons on charges of violating Section 1141 of New York's Penal Code. Much of the controversy, it turned out, involved Chapter 22 as to a veil he broke, which Campbell based upon the Gnostic Mass. In this part of the book, Jurgen travels to the land of Cocaigene, I suppose, anyway, whose pagan philosophy was do that which seems good to you. And he based that, by the way, on do what you will, so it shall be the whole of the law. Here, Jurgen encounters Queen Aniatis and conducts what is essentially a Gnostic Mass. Passage from the book. Then Jurgen raised Queen Aniatis so that she sat upon the altar, and that which was there before tumbled to the ground. Aniatis placed together the tips of her thumbs and other fingers so that her hands made an open triangle. Then Aniatis said, Yea, for I speak with the tongue of every woman, and I shine in the eyes of every woman when the lance is lifted. To serve me is better than all else. When you invoke me with a heart wherein is kindled the serpent flame, if but for a moment, you will understand the delights of my garden, what joy unwordable pulsates therein, and how potent is the sole desire which uses all of a man. To serve me, you will then be eager to surrender whatever else is in your life, and other pleasures you will take with your left hand, not thinking of them entirely. For I am the desire which uses all of a man, and so wastes nothing. And I accept you, I yearn toward you. I who am daughter and somewhat more than daughter to the sun. I am all pleasure, all ruin, and a drunkenness of the inmost sense desire you. I who am, blah, blah, blah. Now Jurgen held his lance erect before Anytus. Crowley, duly flattered, called Cabell's work the best book that has yet to come out of the USA, and an incomparable splendor, a star of the first magnitude blazing in the firmament. Cabell stood trial on October 16, 1922. Although John Quinn believed the case hopeless, Cabell successfully argued that the lance ceremony in his book had a real model, one that was already in print in the Blue Equinox. Cabell was acquitted on October 19th, and the resulting popularity transformed him into a literary giant. For those of you who are considering giving money to porn harms, that is what you will get in return. Absolutely nothing. Obscenity law has been unconstitutionally vague since its inception and will continue to be so. And all that you will do is stir up a lot of noise and create a profound inconvenience for people who are doing absolutely nothing wrong simply because you don't approve of their behavior. Well, I don't approve of your behavior. And if the law is extended in this country, then it has to be extended to every person, regardless of race, color, creed, or any other mitigating factor. So ask yourself, if it becomes possible for one group to remove something that they find offensive, what is to stop there being the removal of something you find offensive? Do you want me to be out there campaigning to make illegal the things I find offensive? I think not, because they are things that you probably enjoy. And unlike you, I am comfortable with you enjoying things that I am offended by. And incidentally, I have many of the materials from the Equinox in the occult section of my personal research library. What are you going to do about it?